Hi everyone, welcome to our Chimney Rock Thursday wine meditation. We've been looking forward to this tasting for a while. We have some really special wines for you guys tonight. I think I've mentioned this before, but it's been kind of a sacred moment for me because I'm not seeing the public at all. And this is my opportunity to engage and hear how you guys are enjoying our wines. And it's just been lovely and sort of rewarding and fulfilling. And I'll confess that I hated it the first time because I'm not talking to people, but I've adjusted. And I accept that you guys are all on the other side, so that's good enough. We'll take it. So today we're going to be tasting two wines. Actually, I'm going to be tasting the second wine. You guys don't have the second wine, and there's a whole special story to go with that. But we're going to start with our 2019 Sauvignon Gris, and I'm really excited about this wine. We haven't made this wine since 2013. So it's been a while since we've made a single varietal Sauvignon Gris. So Sauvignon Gris is a vineyard that we own and farm that's located in Rutherford. Our Sauvignon Blanc and Sauvignon Gris are the only two vineyards that we own that are not here in Stags Leap District. And those blocks were planted basically for our Élevage Blanc, which most Chimney Rock fans are familiar with. That's our Bordeaux-style white blend. Now, we decided it would be sort of fun to see what Sauvignon Gris is like on its own. So let's give you guys a little history on why Sauvignon Gris. What is Sauvignon Gris? Most people haven't heard of it. So Sauvignon Blanc is grown in Bordeaux and several other regions, in Chile. And basically, Sauvignon Gris is like a genetic cousin to the Sauvignon Blanc grape. So a couple of genetic changes that occur naturally give this grape slightly copper-colored skins rather than kind of the bright green to yellow color of Sauvignon Blanc. The grape has slightly thicker skins, and so it tends to retain acidity a little bit better in the heat of Napa. So a traditional Bordeaux white blend, our Élevage Blanc, would be Sauvignon Blanc and Semillon, but our twist on the blend is we blend Sauvignon Gris instead. But we really wanted to give the Gris an opportunity to shine on its own. So we started playing with making it on its own. I made a little bit in 2009, a little bit in 2010, a little bit in 2013, and we've made a whopping 160 cases of the 19, which I have in front of me. So we process it quite differently than we make the Élevage Blanc. So Élevage Blanc is barrel fermented, a little bit of oak. It's really meant to age. In this particular wine, I'm really aiming to showcase the fruit, like just the purity of the fruit. So we whole cluster press the bunches of grapes, and then we juice it to tank. And I actually ferment this in tank. And I do that on purpose because I want really tight control of the temperature. So I fermented at about 50 degrees. Sometimes I even lower that down to 45. So very slow fermentation, really trying to like pull out every aromatic. And so think of with white fermentations, the cooler you are, the more you preserve some of those aromatic esters. The warmer you are, so barrel ferment would be a little bit warmer, you lose some of that, but you're adding the complexity of the barrel. So here we ferment in stainless steel tank, very cold. It goes very slow, it's a very slow ferment. And then when fermentation is done, what we do is we move it to stainless steel barrels, so small barrels, and then we steal a little technique from Burgundy, which is to stir the lees ever so gently. So the lees are the yeast sediment that settle at the bottom of the barrel, and there's a lot of good stuff in that. When you stir that up into the juice, you get more viscosity, a little bit more weight. And so we're trying to build a wine that's both super fruity, but that has some body to make it a really great wine. So let's try this out. And I will tell you, like my nickname, or not my nickname, but I like to say that Sauvignon Gris kind of tames the wild side of Sauvignon Blanc in the blend. On its own, it's just super graceful and pretty. There's a lot of stone fruit, like a lot of nectarine and kind of white peach, a little bit of floral. And the floral is one of the most intriguing things that I find about this because it's unusual. I don't think Sauvignon Blanc has any floral characteristics, but this really does. So it just, there's a little lift in the aromatics that's just super, super pretty. This tends to not lose acidity, so you're going to have nice, bright, and crisp acidity as well. Yeah, so really get, even though there's bright acidity, you get this nice roundness in the palate. Just a beautiful spring, summer wine. I really enjoyed this variety. I have to tell you guys, I believe we are only one of 2 growers who have it in all of Napa Valley. So very proud to have it. It's rare. I think part of the reason it didn't become popular, and it is interplanted in Bordeaux and Chile as well, wherever there's Sauvignon Blanc grown, but it tends to be a little bit lower yielding, so it doesn't yield as many tons per acre or pounds per vine in general. The clusters are smaller, but I think it's quite powerful, and you don't need a lot of it. And on its own, it really is beautiful, and we've really come to love this and enjoy it. So I can't wait to hear who's drinking it. Okay, somebody's enjoying the Fiano. That's great. Yeah, we do a couple of unusual whites here, which are kind of well-kept secrets at Chimney Rock. And I really love the purity of the stainless fermentation. All you get is fruit. There's no oak influence. It's really just, that's the vineyard, that's the fruit. I just find it quite intriguing. I'll contrast it to Sauvignon Blanc for fun. Like, what do I think Sauvignon Blanc? So Sauvignon Blanc to me is a little bit wilder. You know, it has more of this like boxwood. It's kind of, it's more in your face fruit. It's very like, very showy. The Gris has a little bit more restraint aromatically, but it's super, super pretty. In terms of body, the Gris has more body. So the Sauvignon Blanc is always a little bit leaner and meaner, like more acidity and focused. And this is a little bit broader on the palate, which is why I think they're very complementary to each other also. So if you haven't tried our Sauvignon Gris, I urge you, we don't have a lot left of the 19. Get some. It truly is one of my favorite white grapes to make and to taste. I think it's a great, great food wine. So with that, the next tail is a much more long tail. So I don't know if you guys all know, but Chimney Rock does have what I would call a unicorn wine. And our unicorn wine is a little wine called Omega Point. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the birth of this wine and how it originated here. And it literally originated from experimentation. So in 2012, and I think you guys have all heard this about me, my team and I, we love to experiment, try different things every year. We feel like we don't know everything yet about our vineyards, and the way to get there is to really explore different ways of vinifying, different pump over regimes, different yeasts, everything that we can try. And so this particular wine was born of an experiment that I did in 2012. And what we did, so I'm going to get a little wine geeky here. So when you ferment red grapes, they sit on the skins, they ferment, go through the primary fermentation, takes about 14 days. Then we like to leave the skins on the juice for extended maceration, so probably about 30 to 35 days. At the end of that period, what happens, we drain out that juice, right? And you have the skins left. Now, typically, we would drain that juice out during the day and move it into either another tank or barrels. But in this instance, what we did is We drained out most of the tank, so everything that came out naturally, and then we put a sump under that tank and we let it sit overnight. And lo and behold, 12 tons of grapes will give me about a barrel of drippings that come out overnight. And what we started to do in 12 was we started to take that fraction, and I learned this technique from a friend who had worked in New Zealand. In New Zealand, it was nicknamed the egg, this last 60 gallons that drain out. We've nicknamed it the pearl of the tank, because I like that name better. But we basically took the pearl of the tank from some of our best vineyards and set them aside. And we put them in some really cool barrels. So that's the second part of the equation on this wine. So traditionally, a barrel that goes into winemaking comes from a tree that's like 80 to 150 years old. And occasionally, this is interesting, the French government will auction off a 300 to 350 to 400-year-old tree. And different coopers come in and bid for it, and whoever wins gets to make barrels out of that. But it's a very small allocation. So I was exposed to this in Bordeaux, in the center of France. We went out to a forest and we saw the felling of one of these older trees, and I got to try some wine from these barrels, and I thought it was amazing. And so we got our first 4 barrels of older oak back in 2012. And so I put that particular fraction into these amazing older wood barrels. So literally, these barrels are from a tree from the 1600s, which is kind of amazing. Anyway, what's better about an older barrel? You know, I don't know that aromatically it's very different. What's different, it's very fine grained because it's an older tree, and it's just super, super delicate and balanced. And the pearl of the tank, the characteristic is it's bigger and broader and richer. And I thought that would be a good counterbalance. So in 2012, literally, this is the story. I was in the cellar and I took a glass and I took equal parts of these 4 barrels and I smelled it, and it was like a eureka moment. And I literally, true story, I ran upstairs and I called John Trelato and I was like, oh my God, John, you have to try this. This is amazing. We've just done something really special. So we decided to make a wine out of that first experiment. And finding the right name for a unicorn wine is like a big thing, right? But I had found the name already. I didn't know it, but so in the late 1800s, there was a French philosopher by the name of Pierre Chardin, and he conceived, this is a philosophical thing, he conceived the idea of the omega point, which he defined as a maximum level of complexity towards which consciousness and humans and the universe are evolving into. So the idea that we're always evolving, right? And to me, that really spoke to me in terms of winemaking, because winemaking is an evolution that goes year after year. No single season's ever duplicated, right? Every single vintage is slightly different. And the process of learning to make wine is one that never ends. Like, I'll be learning until the day I don't work anymore, because that's just the nature of the beast. And I think for every winemaker, we have this quest to make greatness. And this bottle, to me, the 2012 was our inaugural vintage, was kind of that moment where I felt like, okay, I'm starting to learn something maybe here, and maybe making pretty good wine. Anyway, Omega Point was born. We made, I believe, 4 barrels the first year. What I'm tasting today is the 16 Omega Point. And you, if you're one of our club members, you will be receiving an invitation. This is a wine we only sell by invitation because there's very little of it. We only make a couple of barrels of it. This one's only a couple of barrels. So our invitations are about to go out. So shout out to our club members. Look out for your Omega Point mailer. This is the 16. So let's talk a little bit about vintage 16. 16 is another one of my lazy winemaker vintages. Mother Nature gifted us with incredible growing conditions, nice, not too wet winter, but wet, dry spring, dry summer, small berried, lots of concentration. Not a drought year. So 15 had been a drought year, and the wines from 15 are very, very powerful. 16 was a little bit milder, and so the wines are, to me, they have a little bit more finesse and balance. They're not sort of these. Now this wine is Omega Point, so even though it's a 4-year-old wine, it's really got significant structure, and this has a ton of time to age. So I'm going to smell this and tease you guys and tell you how great it is, so that you can hopefully share it sometime in the future. So aged in 18 months in these very special older barrels from one of my favorite coopers, and the pearl of the tank from some of our best vineyards. Now, I could tell you which ones they are, but I might not. That might have to be my secret. But just, you guys know how many great vineyards we have here. So super, super aromatic, very, very rich and dense in aroma, lots of like black cherry, mocha, just, I mean, it's super, it's just kind of wafting out of the glass. I don't have to like put my nose in there. Ripe, but not, you know, it still has, to me, that stag's leap, je ne sais quoi, like the little bit of dried herb, maybe, a little bit of, you know, herb. And you can definitely smell those beautiful barrels. There's definitely like some vanilla, some cocoa. All right. It's just super round, very rich. It's a power wine for sure. This is a wine for a very, I think, special meal, a very special moment. It's one to lay down in your cellar, but it is actually beautiful right now. Very, very expressive, very balanced. I would call this, and I think one of the things that got me about these particular barrels and the pearl of the tank is there's a seamlessness between kind of the entry of the wine, the mid palate's kind of round, and it just, you know, there's no hard edges. And that to me, that's kind of a quest for me. I think texture and having that sort of continuity in texture is something that I really strive for. And I think Stag's Leap really lends itself to that kind of, you know, velvety, silky, beautiful mouthfeel. So that is Omega Point. Do we have any questions about these wines? Hi, Carol, Angela. Hi, Sash. Hi, Mom. Well, if you guys don't have questions about the wines right now, I'm going to give you a little bit of an update on what's going on in the vineyards and the cellar. There's a lot going on. So Laura and I have been fastidiously working on our 2019 blends. So today we worked on some of our single vineyard blocks, and even though they're just a single vineyard, we select which barrels go into the blend. So it's a lot of hard work. And then in the vineyard, we are almost through veraison. So veraison's the time when the berries start to soften and start to turn full color. And so by next week, by the end of next week, some of our blocks may be fully colored. So we're still going. On Monday, we're actually going to start doing what we call green thinning. So we go through a block, and if there are any clusters that are lagging in color terms, so maybe there's a bright green one here and everything else is red, that gets dropped. So we want to try to make sure that there's an evenness to the ripeness in every vine, and we're about to start doing that. So veraison for winemakers in general is kind of the countdown to harvest. We know that this thing is around the corner, and we really got to start preparing. So lots going on. There's a lot of cleaning. And before we even get to harvest, Laura and I will work on the blends in the lab, but then we have to make it happen in the cellar. So we're going to be busy the month of August putting all of our 2019 blends, and then it's time to go for harvest. So what do I think 2020 is going to be? It is looking really, really good. We've had a really sort of lower than average rainfall, not a drought, but definitely lower than average. And what's been beautiful about the weather, I mean, it was kind of warm and we thought it was going to be early. And then July hit and we started getting these beautiful foggy mornings. And it took a while for the sun to break. And our temperatures really haven't hit much higher than 90 yet, which is really nice. It's sort of nice, even ripening and just kind of perfection. So I'm predicting, and I should knock on wood, I'm going to knock on wood here in this barrel, that it's going to be a lazy winemaker's vintage. I hope. Because Mother Nature so far has really done amazing things. So the crop looks smaller certainly than 18 and 19, and perhaps smaller than average as well. So I think we're going to have some great wines ahead. So you guys keep supporting us, and we will keep making some great wines. So any questions yet?
Ken is asking about how Tomahawk and Ganymede developed. Do they develop at the same time? What can you expect kind of from those two vineyards?
Yeah, so Tomahawk and Ganymede. So Ganymede comes from one of the warmer spots on the ranch. Tomahawk comes from one of the cooler spots on the ranch. In general, my perception has been that they need a fair amount of time, both of them. Ganymede's some of the oldest vines on the property. It's got a lot of power. I feel like the tannin's not quite as intense as Tomahawk, so you maybe almost want to drink Tomahawk sooner, and you know, drink your Ganymede. No, sorry, drink your Ganymede sooner, drink your Tomahawk later. As a rule, if I were to come up with a rule, but I will say this: it changes vintage to vintage, and whether it's a cool vintage or a warm vintage, I would say the answer to that question is kind of vintage dependent. But both of those are aged 18 months. Ganny gets 100% new French oak. Tomahawk gets a little bit less. But I think the bottle aging time for them, at minimum, you know, is, I don't know, 3 to 5 years before you really want to drink it. But you know, Chimney Rock's wines are very approachable, I think, even in youth. So it's always, how long can you resist it is the question.
Megan is asking, how many hours of sleep do you get on an average night during harvest?
Oh, Megan, that's a great question. You know, it all depends on the weather. So I can tell you that if it ever rains during harvest, I don't sleep at all. If it's a lazy winemaker's vintage, you're so exhausted that you crash, and it's like the deepest sleep. But I would say 5 hours is pretty typical. And I'm a 7-hour kind of gal, so it's a little tough.
And I have a question. So, in terms of how many barrels of Omega Point are made each year, how do you guys make the decision between, like, you end up with 4 versus 2?
Yeah, well, we pull several pearl barrels from different blocks, and it's whatever the best blend is, right? So if I could take all of them and make a bigger Omega Point of 6 barrels, but we don't usually do that. We really kind of select. It's a barrel selection, so it's 2 to 4 depending on what that looks like.
And then lots of people are saying hi from, we have Pasadena, Northern Virginia, we have Arizona, and then earlier someone said that they're drinking the 2007 Clone 7.
Well, that's a great one. 2007 is one of our hillsides. How is that 2007? I'd love to hear how it is. That was a very ripe year too, so very like fleshy, jammy, kind of Napa Stag Sleep Cab. Love that year.
Do you have a memory of when you enjoyed Omega Point that stands out?
You know, that 12 definitely has a dear place in my heart, I would say. So even tasting it like last year when it was, I mean, we haven't made this for a long time, so we haven't seen, you know, its ageability long term. But I think this is definitely one of those wines you put down for at least 5 years, if you can resist it. And I'm terrible at cellaring, so.
What's the oldest wine that you've had?
The oldest wine that I've ever had was a 1928 Mouton Rothschild. When I was at UC Davis, I was a graduate student, and they have quite an impressive collection. And so occasionally they would pull out some of these older wines. We got to drink a 1952 Latour, 1928 Mouton. And the 1928 was especially meaningful to me because that's my father's birth year. So it was really cool to think about, And how was it at that age? It was a little past its peak, but it was still an emotional wine to try because it was 1928.
James says, loved tasting with you in Yosemite.
Oh, hi, James. I remember you. I missed our Yosemite trip this year.
And then a question from Callie is that she said they love the Sauvignon Gris. What made you want to experiment with the grape since it's not that common in the valley?
Yeah, so the Gris, again, it was planted for the Élevage Blanc project, and we really wanted to create something that was an homage to the white wines of Bordeaux. That was what Élevage Blanc was meant to be. Now, in Bordeaux, they blend Semillon and Sauvignon Blanc, but we thought that it's too warm in Napa for Semillon. Semillon tends to lose acidity here, and we wanted the acidity because that really helps the ageability of a white wine. And so Doug Fletcher, my predecessor here, he takes credit for coming up with this. He had tasted a barrel of Sauvignon Gris at Chalk Hill with the winemaker there, Bill Nuttall, at the time, long, long ago. And he remembered the acidity. He thought, what if we tried this? And he knew it was interplanted in Bordeaux as well. And so that's why we went with Sauvignon Gris, and it was a very fortunate attempt. I think in planting vineyards, you often gamble. You do your research and you look at your soil and you're trying to make the best decisions, and occasionally, you hit it out of the park, and I think the Sauvignon Gris has been one of those discoveries for us.
Okay, and a question from Don, would the Sauvignon Gris ever be included in a wine club shipment?
We traditionally have not included whites or rosés in our wine club shipment because our fan base is Cabernet loving and red wine loving in general, but it's accessible to you guys before it even goes to the market. So just keep an eye on your emails, and you can always call our team and get a bottle outside of the club shipment.
And then to wrap up, I think it might be great to ask what our viewers are interested in hearing from us for future sessions, and then reminding them when they can see us again.
Yeah, so this is a message for all of you guys. We would love to hear what you guys want to get from these tastings. We're going to continue to do them. I can't travel, I can't get on a plane, so I'm going to come to you virtually. And let us know what you guys want us to taste, what you're interested in hearing about. Are there wines that we haven't covered that you'd like to hear about, or do you want me to talk more about winemaking or vineyards? We can do anything with this beautiful half-hour meditation as long as there's wine involved. That's the only essential thing. We have to have at least one wine. And we'll be coming back to you in 2 weeks. I'm not sure which wines we're having, but you'll get an email. So look out on Facebook and look out in your emails. Don't delete us. Thank you so much, guys. I want to raise a little glass. Since it's a meditation, I've been thinking a lot today about a person who really made a difference in this country. So I want to raise a glass to John Lewis today. May he rest in peace and power. It's amazing what ordinary people, how they can do extraordinary things. So cheers to that.